Hi class, this is Dr. Swanberg, and I'm talking to you today about week 3 of English 102 online. I'm going to remind you once again to avoid the activity stream. You're going to miss a lot of things if you go to the activity stream. Instead, click on courses. And in our course, a couple of practices, please make sure that you click on announcements and are reading all of the announcements. The announcements are not just little sides. These are the things that are really important that I'm trying to communicate with you. So if you've missed any of these, please go back and read old ones. Read them out loud. These are essential. So make sure that you are regularly reading your course announcements. Another quick reminder, please don't try to communicate with me using this button. Please instead go to office hours and instructor contact information and find my email there. This Blackboard message does not alert me in any way that you've sent me a message. If you need to reach me, you can reach me very quickly using this contact information. You also can send me a message via the Remind app if you would like to do that as well. Also be wary of clicking on this discussions button. It does take you to all of the discussions for the course, but please remember that we are working 1 week at a time here. We are currently in week 3, and I like to make sure that my assignments change and shift based on the needs that I'm seeing in the work that you turn in. So if you're doing a discussion board from week 5 ahead of time, I may change it for week 5 and have you do something else based on the needs that I see in week 4. So please don't work ahead in those. Stay in the weeks. This is where you live, right here, the weekly assignments. And you go there, and we are entering week 3. And let's take a look at what's in week 3. It is going to be a busy week. The readings for week 3 are here under course readings. They are still poetry. At this point, you should have read all of the poems listed under course readings. So I've unhidden the second set of 10, and you should have read all 20 poems at this point. So there are some tips here for reading actively. And what you might keep track of in a notebook as you read. Also, there's a video here where I go over the poems in some detail, not a tremendous amount of detail, but I do make sure that you have some of the essential things that you need to know to understand each poem. So this is really essential video, especially since you're not in that live class where we get to talk about them and you can ask questions. If you do have questions about the poems and what they mean, by all means, send me an email and we can set up a time to talk about them. But I think this video will help. There is a sample student essay for you to read. We're working on this poetry analysis, and we're going to work on it a little bit at a time. But the first step is always to see what you are aiming for. So if you could give that a read and just see what it is you're going to be asked to write. And then just wait and just do it one step at a time with me. We're going to be doing it one step at a time. You have a handout on quotation using quotes. Now, these are the basics. This is a review of what you should have learned in 101, but maybe you didn't, or maybe it was a long time ago and you need a review. But it's really essential that you know the skills and that you know how I'm teaching it. This is how I expect you to do it. Other instructors may have you do it different ways, but I am picky and I want it done well. And I know you are capable of doing it well. And so I set a high standard. So please make sure that you are reading this and watching the tutorial that goes over it. Now, this tutorial goes over this handout. So ideally, you'd print this handout, have it in front of you while you watch this video. This is a video that goes over some of the differences in quoting poetry specifically, as opposed to quoting prose, which is in this handout. So make sure you take a quick look at that. This is not me, but I will tell you that down here in the assignment for this week, there is a sample that you can use as a model for how I expect you to quote poetry. And the answers in the quiz go over this using quotes information and the quoting poetry video. So make sure you've watched the videos and looked at the handouts before you take that quiz. The essay jobs checklist is just there to remind you of essay structure. the jobs of a thesis and concluding paragraph in particular, in case you forgot those in English 101. We will go over what I expect for thesis and concluding paragraphs for this essay in later weeks. But right now, this is just a little bit of 101 review for those of you who may need it or want it. There is a quiz on quoting poetry. There is a discussion board for discussing the second set of poems for Unit 1. This asks you to think about both sets of poems in Unit 1 and write a 10 to 12 sentence paragraph discussing one theme that runs through 3 poems. Now, this is practicing for our essay, so take it real seriously. Don't give it short energy. This is, you know, the more work you do here in discussion board, the less work you have to do later. And then for the assignment, I'm going to open the assignment and preview it with you, go over the instructions. I'm asking you to choose one of the poems you plan to write about and the thesis you are planning to support. Now, you may not have your thesis totally worked out yet, but that's okay. We'll work on that together. And write a trial run paragraph about it using source practices we learned about in class. A sample paragraph is below to help you remember what you're aiming for. And then we have a sample paragraph here that reminds you what you're aiming for. Notice this is a nice, well-developed paragraph, okay? So here are some of the things that are the basics that I'm looking for. Number 1, it has a topic sentence that is about a thesis. Being poor can make a person distrust other people. And that you talk about that for a moment before you introduce the poem. One poem that shows this is The Poor. I expect a source introduction where you spend a few sentences introducing the author and the poem. This poem is by William Carlos Williams, who is a poet and a doctor. Then I expect you to summarize the poem a little bit before you quote from it. I think I spend 2 or 3 or 4 sentences talking about the poem in general before I show it to my reader. I have quoted it once, twice, 3 times, 4 times. There are, let's double check. There's 1, 2, 3. Yeah, I quoted it 4 times. And I expect no less than 3 quotations from the poem in your paragraph. Notice each quote is integrated into a complete sentence and has a citation at the end. The line breaks are marked with a slash, as you've learned in the video that you watched this week. Okay, and I've done that 4 times. After each one, I have offered my own analysis, what I want the reader to see in the quote that I provided. So you're not just showing it to me, you're making me see what you see in it. Okay, and then it ends with analysis, not with a quote. So those are the main, kind of bottom line factors in the paragraph that you're trying to write. Again, this will become part of your larger essay. We are building that essay 1 or 2 paragraphs at a time so you can get feedback on the pieces before the whole thing is due. If you have questions about this week, definitely let me know. We are working on this weekend discussion board. Let me just double check this. We are working on, you're trying to arrive at a thesis about this theme. What do these 3 poets mean to teach their readers by writing about this theme? So we will work a little bit more on theme versus thesis in week 4. But right now you are thinking about trying to do the best you can to take it from theme to thesis. A thesis is something arguable. So we're trying to go from, I think they're all talking about poverty, to, well, what are they trying to teach us about poverty? That's not a water is wet kind of thing. It's more like poverty can make you bitter, where we might argue about whether that's true or not. And that's a thesis, something where you could argue about it with somebody. Okay, don't forget to reply to your peers' posts. That is half of the assignment. The quiz and the close reading paragraph are due on the 31st. And your initial post in discussion board is due on the 27th, and your responses to peers are due on the 31st. If you have questions about this week's work, by all means, send me an email and ask